The skyline of Manhattan hums like circuitry. Money moving faster than breath, power hidden behind glass. On trading floors, men in navy suits wage invisible wars, their battles fought in percentages and milliseconds. But beyond those towers, on cracked sidewalks and glowing laptop screens, another army rises. Anonymous, restless, hungry for justice masked as profit. The war begins not with violence, but with disbelief. A whisper that Wall Street's fortress isn't indestructible. The story starts when one trader bets too big, one forum laughs too loud, and one ordinary investor refuses to lose quietly again. The air thickens with irony. Billionaires calling foul play as the people play their own game. In this storm of pixels and pride, Main Street has found its voice, and it sounds like rebellion disguised as a market order. By noon, the markets look calm, but beneath the ticker lies rebellion. Hedge fund analysts talk in symbols and ratios, but the online swarm moves with anger disguised as optimism. Ethan recognizes the anomaly. A stock that should rise but won't fall. Riley calls it justice through numbers. Screens become trenches, comments become strategies, and the illusion of balance fractures. The market is no longer just a machine, it's a mirror for discontent. Flashing every color of defiance. When the bell closes, the city exhales. But the screens stay awake. Forums ignite with screenshots and slogans. Profits become proof of belonging. Riley's post goes viral, filled with irony and hope. Ethan sends cautious notes to investors, masking fear as control. The next sunrise will bring volatility, the new religion of the people. For now, silence hums between skyscrapers and small apartments alike. The pause before a storm no chart can measure. Headlines flood every channel. Retail versus Wall Street. The people's stock. Ethan watches with quiet disbelief as pundits debate morality through stock tickers. Riley, still at the desk, grins at the rising chart, pride swelling with every uptick. The market has turned theater and both sides play their part. For one feverish moment it feels like equality, but behind every meme and broadcast, power still hides where it always has, in silence, waiting to reassert itself. Night deepens. The battle has only begun, but the air already tastes electric. Two worlds stare into the same glowing abyss, both believing they control it. Ethan runs algorithms through the night, searching for logic in chaos. Riley refreshes charts, searching for proof that belief can bend numbers. Between them, unseen, $1 trillion hums like static in the dark. Tomorrow prices will move again, and with them the fate of pride, power, and people. Morning breaks like a warning shot. The markets open higher, but every uptick feels choreographed. Hedge funds have regrouped overnight, their algorithms sharpened, their liquidity pooled like ammunition. Ethan stands at the heart of it, voice calm but eyes hollow, issuing quiet orders to crush the rising stock before chaos spreads. On the other side of the city, Riley watches in disbelief as the numbers turn. Sudden, merciless, calculated. The machine is striking back. Panic sweeps through the forums as screens light up red, each notification a digital scream. The war for control has begun, and this time, the field is rigged. Across message boards, disbelief curdles into fury. The same crowd that cheered victory now speaks in fragments of fear. They're manipulating again. They're shutting us down. Screens freeze. Broker apps halt trades. Riley's hand hovers over the mouse, rage fighting despair. Ethan reads the headlines on his phone. Trading restrictions trigger retail outrage, and feels a flicker of guilt quickly buried beneath duty. The system defends itself, even from justice. Somewhere, an invisible lever is pulled, and freedom sells at a discount. The day becomes a blur of headlines and outrage. Protest threads ignite like wildfires. Screenshots of halted trades, petitions demanding justice. Ethan watches markets stabilize under forced control, profits salvaged, reputations preserved. But beneath the calm, something ferments. The victory tastes like ash. Public anger grows viral. Riley live streams into the night, voice trembling but resolute, calling out the names behind the curtain. The world listens. For the first time, Wall Street isn't untouchable. It's visible, vulnerable, and afraid. Night falls, and Manhattan glows like circuitry under siege. Anonymous investors flood social media with battle cries. Hashtags trend faster than prices move. Ethan's team deploys counter-narratives, buying media time, rewriting the story as market correction. But Riley's message cuts through the noise. A single clip of truth that spreads faster than any ad. A generation once ignored now speaks the only language power understands: exposure. The hedge funds feel the heat of a public they can't predict or control. As dawn approaches again, exhaustion and defiance blur together. The market reopens, and volatility reigns. Ethan sits in silence, realizing control is slipping, not from his firm, but from the narrative. Riley, sleepless, scrolls through messages from strangers calling them a hero. For a fleeting moment, both understand that they're part of something larger than profit. The war has left the charts and entered hearts and headlines. The numbers will settle eventually, but the truth won't. The rebellion has gone viral, and it won't log off. The war that began with numbers now bleeds into narrative. The morning news cycle turns into a battlefield. One side armed with talking points, the other with screenshots and memes. Ethan sits before the cameras, his rehearsed calm concealing dread. Every denial fuels another thread online. Riley, now a reluctant symbol, faces interviews with defiant grace, realizing the cost of visibility. Truth, once hidden in code and contracts, is now public property. For the first time, markets answer to people, not power. And Wall Street trembles under scrutiny it cannot silence. Riley walks the streets of Brooklyn, phone buzzing endlessly. Praise, threats, sponsorships, subpoenas. The internet has crowned a hero and built a cage. The rebellion is no longer theirs. It belongs to everyone with a Wi-Fi signal and a grudge. Yet the faces in shop windows nod with quiet pride. Teachers, cab drivers, cashiers who finally feel seen. Somewhere above, in penthouses and boardrooms, those same screens glow like warnings. Transparency has become contagious. Inside closed conference rooms, hedge fund executives whisper strategy, leaks, lawsuits, reputational cleanups. Ethan listens but barely hears. The noise outside has grown louder than their algorithms. The empire feels mortal. He gazes through the glass wall at the city below, its lights pulsing like restless data. Somewhere out there, Riley speaks for a generation he once ignored. For the first time, he wonders if he's on the wrong side of the truth, or simply late to recognize it. The story spirals. Documentaries stream within days. Hashtags become headlines, and digital outrage turns physical. Small protests forming outside Wall Street. Riley watches from afar, feeling both pride and fear. This was never meant to be a revolution, just a demand to be heard. But revolutions have no pause button. Ethan steps outside the office for the first time in days and sees the crowd below, not as enemies, but as a mirror. For the first time, he feels the weight of every bet ever made against them. Night falls again, but silence refuses to return. The market has become a confession booth. Every trade tells a story of fear or faith. Riley live streams from a rooftop, speaking not of stocks, but of accountability, of visibility, of choice. Ethan watches the feed alone in his apartment, unshaven, tie gone, whiskey half full. For a moment, their eyes meet through pixels. Two sides of the same wound. The exposure is complete. The truth can't be untraded. Markets open under stormlight. Prices tumbling like dominoes, headlines blurring into chaos. Panic feeds on itself. Algorithms devour logic. And the screens, no longer separate winners from losers. Ethan's firm bleeds capital by the second. Traders shout across the floor, chasing liquidity that no longer exists. Riley watches from a cafe, heart hammering with disbelief. This isn't victory, it's contagion. What began as rebellion now threatens the very system both sides depend on. The irony burns. Power has turned self-destructive, and the people caught between can only watch as the structure bends toward breaking. Online, hysteria becomes gospel. Charts collapse, memes turn apocalyptic, and panic becomes entertainment. Riley tries to calm the swarm, streaming from their apartment, voice trembling but steady. This wasn't the plan. But faith built on fury doesn't listen. They refresh the chart again. The same stock that once symbolized freedom now bleeds like every other. Somewhere, between pride and fear, they realize the crowd has become its own hedge fund. Emotional, ruthless, unstoppable. Ethan's partners abandon ship. Margin calls, liquidation orders, frozen accounts. The machinery that once obeyed him now crushes him. He stares at a single monitor, watching numbers vanish into zeros, knowing each loss is both monetary and moral. The war has taken on a life of its own. Somewhere, Riley's name trends again, this time framed as the spark that burned the empire. Ethan exhales, then smiles, bitterly, realizing how fragile the illusion of control always was. The crash becomes history in real time. News anchors call it the Great Equalizer, yet the damage is far from equal. Small investors lose savings, hedge funds lose empires, and the city loses of order. Riley walks through Manhattan streets littered with discarded newspapers, each headline screaming collapse. Cameras swarm around them, hungry for commentary, but words feel useless. Behind the noise, one truth echoes. The market was never a game, only a mirror showing everyone what they refused to see. By nightfall, the city stands still. Trading halts, networks go dark, and even outrage seems tired. Ethan sits alone in his office, stripped of noise, stripped of purpose. Riley, watching from home, feels no triumph, only quiet grief for a system too broken to fix. The market will reopen eventually. The pundits will spin recovery, but something deeper has cracked. The myth of control, the faith in balance. All of it lies exposed. Collapse isn't just financial, it's spiritual. And tomorrow's opening bell will ring hollow. The morning after the crash, silence feels heavier than sirens. Wall Street is a ghost town guarded by police lines and television vans. The nation wakes to shattered portfolios and questions no one wants to answer. Ethan is summoned before congressional inquiry, a ritual of blame disguised as justice. Riley watches the broadcast from a diner, surrounded by strangers who lost everything, but still believe something might change. The reckoning isn't about numbers now. It's about faces. And the faces of greed, guilt, and grief all look human. Riley's name now echoes through politics. The voice of the people turns symbol of reform. Invitations flood in. Talk shows, podcasts, panels. They attend none. The revolution feels hijacked by headlines, stripped of sincerity. The same corporations once silent now print, empower the people on billboards. Every cause becomes a campaign. Riley walks through downtown Manhattan, past the same banks still standing. Same suits rushing to meetings, and wonders if anything truly broke or if collapse was just another reset. Inside the hearing chamber, Ethan speaks without arrogance, without armor. We built systems too efficient to feel, he admits. The room stills. Cameras capture his confession. Part guilt, part revelation. He's no longer a villain, but a relic of an age collapsing under its own momentum. Outside, protesters chant for accountability. Inside, the air feels strangely sacred. Every empire ends not with revolution, but recognition. Riley returns home, turns on the TV, and sees Ethan's words replayed endlessly. The anger that once burned now feels replaced by fatigue and faint empathy. Maybe this war was never about victory, but visibility. They open their laptops, stare at an empty forum post box, then type, "Maybe it's time to rebuild." The screen glows quietly. For the first time, it feels like peace. That night, the markets reopen. Slower, quieter, almost reverent. Ethan walks out of the courthouse into pale morning light. No cameras chasing him now. Riley closes their laptop, takes a walk outside, and breathes. The war that divided them has left its mark on both. Not scars, but awareness. The numbers will recover. The trust may not. Yet somewhere between loss and lesson, the idea of fairness feels imaginable again. The reckoning isn't punishment. It's awakening. Months pass. The noise fades, but the echoes remain. In boardrooms, in coffee shops, in the cautious optimism of ordinary people checking their accounts again. Regulation bills crawl through Congress. Headlines shift to recovery. Ethan has traded the skyline for silence, consulting quietly, no longer chasing billions but meaning. Riley teaches online workshops, helping small investors navigate a system that once devoured them. What was once war now feels like reconstruction. Fragile, necessary, human. Trust, it turns out, is the rarest currency of all. Ethan sits in a midtown cafe, no entourage, no screens. His phone buzzes with offers, interviews, partnerships, redemption tours, all unanswered. He looks out the window and sees construction cranes over Wall Street, workers rebuilding facades cracked from the collapse. The sound of hammers and drills feels honest, almost cleansing. For the first time in years, he orders coffee and tastes it. The bitterness feels earned. The media moves on, but people don't forget. Financial institutions release statements of reform, promising transparency, equality, accountability, words tested against time. Riley watches one such ad play before their online class, then pauses it mid-sentence. It's not about slogans, they tell their students. It's about systems that listen. Faces on the call nod slowly. Progress is slow, fragile, and painfully human, but it's movement. And movement means hope. Ethan walks through Battery Park, passing street musicians and joggers, the hum of the city gentler than he remembers. He spots a newsstand selling papers. One headline reads, "Markets stabilize, people first." He buys a copy, folds it under his arm, and sits by the river. The skyline reflects on the Hudson like a promise. For all its greed and noise, the city still stands. Flawed, resilient, alive. He smiles faintly. Maybe redemption isn't found in profit, but in perspective. That evening, the city glows soft under new rhythm. Not greed, but grace. Riley finishes their class and steps onto the balcony, watching lights flicker across the skyline. Somewhere, Ethan looks up at the same view from across the river. The two share an unspoken connection, invisible but intact, forged not by victory, but survival. The market will rise again. It always does. But this time, maybe the people will rise with it. The rebuild isn't about structure. It's about soul. Years pass. The story of the rebellion becomes history, then myth, then curriculum. Universities teach it as the people's market movement, documentaries dissect it, podcasts romanticize it. But beneath the nostalgia, the real legacy breathes quietly, in the small decisions people make every day. Ethan, now a lecturer, teaches ethics in finance to a new generation of traders who see transparency as strength. Riley, a writer and advocate, publishes Markets for Everyone, a manifesto blending hope with realism. The war between hedge funds and Main Street is long over, but its echoes guide the future, not through revolution, but remembrance. In a cozy bookstore in Brooklyn, Riley signs copies of their book. Lines stretch around the block. Students, retirees, small investors carrying memories of chaos and courage. A woman in her 60s tells Riley she started investing after watching their live stream years ago. "It wasn't about stocks," she says softly. "It was about believing I could matter." Riley smiles, humble. The movement's numbers faded, but its meaning didn't. Change, like capital, compounds quietly. Ethan and Riley meet again for the first time in years, not as adversaries, but as architects of aftermath. They sit across a small cafe table, laughter breaking years of silence. The talk drifts from markets to life, from collapse to growth. There's no apology, no blame, only shared understanding of what it costs to make the system human again. Outside, the city hums with calm commerce, like an orchestra finally tuned to harmony. The global markets thrive again, not perfectly, but consciously. New companies form, pledging transparency by code. Investors speak of fairness without irony. News anchors no longer talk about Main Street versus Wall Street. They speak of shared growth. Ethan retires quietly, content. Riley becomes a mentor guiding activists and analysts alike. The legacy of their struggle isn't wealth or fame, but awareness. A generation that knows the price of ignorance and the power of accountability. At dusk, the camera drifts over New York, steady, unhurried. The skyline stands familiar yet changed, its lights steady instead of fevered. Riley closes their laptop and steps onto their balcony, breathing in the calm. Across the river, Ethan waters a small rooftop garden, quiet smile beneath fading light. The city, once battleground, now feels like home again. The war between hedge funds and Main Street never truly ended. It evolved into understanding. The real market, they learned, isn't run on money, but on memory.